Welcome to our weekly discussion series that is hosted by the Chaldean Cultural Center in collaboration with U of M, Detroit Center, Unique Voices in Films. And recently, we are very excited that we've started collaborating with CMN TV, which reaches 11 cities in Oakland County, and they will air this after we air it. So thank you for coming today. And I have a wonderful, wonderful guest that is right now in the United Arab Emirates, but he is originally raised in Alexandria, Egypt, and educated in Montreal. Dr. Kamal Abdel-Malek, welcome.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
We're very excited. You have a very rich history, and then you have in the academia, you have a wonderful, a lot of things to teach us because you've taught at Princeton and Brown universities. And while at Brown University, you contributed to and taught in the program in Israeli and Palestinian Studies in Jerusalem, something very important, obviously. And currently, you are the editor-in-chief of the Arabic and World Literature. It's a scholarly e-journal, which is based in London. And which is holding is this its first conference, an online conference? Is this the first conference that you guys are going to do?
The first conference, yes.
Okay, well, it's a great topic, by the way. It is celebrating Arab women agents of change and progress, and they are honoring Nawal El-Saadawi, which I am so excited and honored to be one of the speakers, one of the presenters among these wonderful women. And this is going to take place in November 7th to 8th. We will put a link for people so that they can, participate or attend. So having introduced you again, welcome. And I have so many questions for you.
Thank you very much, Wian, for hosting me. And I'm really delighted to have this opportunity to talk to you and through you to people who are watching us.
Well, one of the things that you are currently involved in, like I mentioned, is being the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Arabic and World Literature. And I would like you to share, what is this journal about and what makes its mission and vision unique?
Okay, I founded this this journal this year in 2020, and the idea behind it is simple, and which is how to relate the Arabic literary tradition to its sister tradition in the world. How can we relate Arabic literature to world literature? I think it's been a while now since we started seeing research that connects the specific national literature of the Arabs with world literature. This is actually the key word here is nexus, trying to find connective tissue between Arabic literature and world literature. And the idea is not to keep talking about the same specific literary figures in Arabic to Arabs, but to take that discourse and try to, in English and in Arabic, to communicate with other literatures and with other traditions, to kind of widen the scope a little bit and find ways to relate to the other. As you could see, it's a mission that is badly needed in our divided and troubled world.
Yes, it's correct. It is very needed. And so that's great work that you're offering this, especially with a lot of Arabs now all around the world. So a lot of the Arabs are not even just in the Arab world, but they're all over, like the United States and elsewhere.
Right.
Your scholarly and fictional work is preoccupied with the question of how people from different cultural backgrounds relate to one another without losing their authentic selves. What are some of the answers you've come up across to this question?
Okay, thank you very much. This is a wonderful question to which I have to start by saying there isn't really one answer that can be satisfactory. It's an ongoing process. It is a search. You continue to look for ways to keep your authentic self while being open to other people's cultures. Let me start by some observations that might come as a little bit shocking to people. You know, I think that first of all, that the human nature and even our own bodies are not necessarily very welcoming to foreign entities. You know, think about the human body as rejecting any foreign body. Think about the body, you know, you're trying to transplant, you know, put another organ inside the body, and how the body would actually reject it. And then doctors or surgeons would actually have to fool the body by injecting into it some liquid that would make it okay to receive the implanted foreign body. So, I mean, this is like to shock a little bit. and think about the children and how naturally they would always kind of reject somebody else or not wanting to share. And then we learn, you know, we keep teaching them for years and years how to share because it doesn't come natural to them. So our own nature is against, you know, civilization and culture. So we need to have culture in order to educate our body to receive others and to educate ourselves, of course, as human beings, to receive and communicate with others. So this is like just a preliminary, you know. And so the way I look at it is that also I have to go to, you know, the nature again and see that, you know, there are entities, organisms in the world that, first of all, either the relationship with another organism is parasitic. So one sucks the blood of or get the nourishment from another entity. There is another that would actually find a way to have some what they call commensal, you know, like an equal, you know, reciprocity, some sort of reciprocity. I, as an organism, can exist only by sharing with you this other entity, life and nourishment. I think that that's what we need to aspire to do, to find a way to live with other people and be even the first to defend the right to be. It's not like, you know, I tolerate you. That's why I don't really like the word tolerance. You know, the minute that people say, you see, we're tolerance, tasamuh, tasamuh, it is not really the right word to use. Tasamuh, tolerance, is that I can't stand you, but it's okay. You know, it's okay. You can be around, you know? And
amazing. This is, yeah, we had somebody, our last guest last week, principal of a school, that this were his exact words. He says, I don't know this word tolerance. I mean, it's just even offensive, like for me to tolerate like something. Yeah.
And it's like, what is tolerance exactly? It's just like, okay, you know, in an ideal world, I should be only myself alone and my interests alone. But since you're around, you know, and I'll find a way to kind of, you know, tolerate you. No, this is not the model. The model is not tolerance. The model is that to have something called shared life, to have coexistence, and to be curious about this foreign culture or foreign, you know, other, you know, to be curious. There is, let me engage in some kind of criticism of multiculturalism in Canada, you know, and I say, well, it's absolutely wonderful. In fact, I personally would prefer multiculturalism Canadian way than melting pot American way. Okay, so this is how I stand on these issues, all right? But I still criticize the multicultural way of Canada. Multicultural way of Canada is not like, you know, I speak French and you speak English and you come from different background, and each community is somehow given money by Canada Council, I think it's still called, to actually do research about their own communities and have centers like yours, for example. This is really common in Canada. But I think this is not enough to really have a shared life in a Canadian society, which I absolutely admire and immigrated to, by the way, a while ago, is to be curious and to study and to try to be knowledgeable about this other culture. So it's not like I'm accepting you alone and that's it, or I greet you, it's enough, I smile in your face. No, I am curious the way I am curious about the Chaldean, you know, center and the community. I'm talking about really genuinely
yes,
curious.
yes. And,
you know,
and from our end as well, you are invited here because we are very curious, because you are doing something cultural, and
that's absolutely wonderful. I mean,
so,
I really
for the
like
Arab
that.
world, for women. So
Yeah.
you don't have to be a Chaldean for me to. How am I going to learn and explore? So
Exactly.
Opportunity, and as I mentioned before the interview started, for us, we found when the COVID happened, the situation. We thought, well, one of the things is this is an opportunity for us to explore the world, you know, and to learn from it. And so they have a chance to learn from who we are, and we have a chance to learn who they are.
And likewise I am, and you could see that because you are going to participate with us in the upcoming conference on Arab women, celebrating Arab women, with a very exciting title about
very exciting.
yeah. Women, and we don't know, or at least I do not know myself the particulars about this background. Well, that's great. And remember, I'm not a woman, and yet I am interested in promoting and awareness of the role of women in our own, you know, respective societies, and the Arab world in this case. And not only that, but I actually meant it when I said celebrating.
Yes.
Celebrating. It's not like, you know, men would promote the interests of men and women like this, and then Chaldeans, only Chaldeans, and, you know, Christian Copts, only Christian Copts, and then Sunni Muslims, you know. What kind of world is this if we are going to promote the interests of our own communities regardless or in isolation from other people?
Yes.
We need to celebrate the symphony of cultures and the multiplicity of tongues and ethnicities and backgrounds and orientations. That is going to be our salvation if we want to survive in this troubled times.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And I want to talk about your most recent book in Arabic. It's titled The Pyramid and the Skyscraper, America in Egyptian Eyes. So in what ways are you comparing pyramids to skyscrapers? What is their common point? Is it a matter of history or architecture or both?
Well, actually, the two, of course, they are architectural entities, both. All right, but let us contemplate a little bit the difference between the two. All right, the pyramid, I mean, it evokes what? Ancient history of Egypt. But remember that the pyramid was built as a big grave for the great pharaoh, right? And so they built it with the eye on the afterlife, okay, and eternity, right? And also at the same time, it kind of, what is written all over it is the incredible architectural, you know, excellence and knowledge of these ancient Egyptians. Something quite remarkable, actually. I don't know, have you ever visited Egypt?
I have not, unfortunately. I visited quite.
It would be my pleasure to tour, you know, of taking a tour of my
Oh, I'd
country.
love it. Don't put ideas in my head right now. Like, as soon as the COVID is over, yes.
Okay, and not only that, of course, I visited many times the pyramids, but I actually entered into the Great Pyramid, you know, once or twice. Okay, so this is whereas compare this now to the skyscraper, you know, which is a symbolic of the United States. What is a skyscraper really? It's a towering edifice that has modernity written across it, all over it, but I must add this certain audacity, okay, that smacks of this super power that emerged on the world scene, right? And with his absolute magnificence of the height and pointing to the sky. I have to tell you that Arabs had problems with the word skyscraper. You speak Arabic, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, as you know, in our Arabic language, the word for sky and heaven are one. It's just the same, sama, right? So the word sama, you know, with a skyscraper, if you translate it literally, it's like heaven scraper. Blasphemous word. It smacks of that kind of audacity of this young, you know, strong, youthful nation called America. You understand? I'm just kind of putting it in these kind of metaphorical language, you know. And so I use these two as symbolic, you know, as symbolizing each one of these countries, America and Egypt. And so I trace in this anthology the image of America as it is seen in the accounts, in the travel accounts of Egyptians, all the way from early 20th century, starting from 1912, a guy called Prince Muhammad Ali, our own Muhammad Ali, okay, who actually visited, you know, the United States. Actually, it was a cruise, and it was around the time the Titanic actually sank, because he mentioned that, right? And through the several other Egyptians, all the way to the 1950s, 40s actually, 1948, 50, by a guy called Said Qutb, one of the major figures in Muslim Brotherhood, and whose image of America actually has affected many of the young kind of radical groups in the region, in the Arab world, and their views on America. All the way to Ala al-Aswani, the Egyptian writer, novelist, in his famous novel called Chicago. The setting now is in the United States. So I trace all of this, and I try to find a way to see how Egyptians actually have related to this new, you know, country called the United States.
The United States. And this is a study of almost 100 years, from
100 years, yeah.
Yes, 100 years.
That's what I covered. And I, you know, I have to tell you that is when it appeared. I mean, I have now 2 editions. The first edition was in '95, I think, and the second was in 2011. And I updated it, you know, to include after 9/11, you know. And I must tell you that it was actually used by the Congress. You remember the Congress report on 9/11, the big thick book that appeared? You will find references to this anthology, because it was the only source that has put together portraits of America for about 100 years, and of course translated into English. So Usually I don't like to say this because of the association, of course, of something extremely negative and tragic as the 9/11, but nonetheless, it also shows the importance of that particular work. You know?
Yes.
So this is yeah, something that I've been interested in.
Well, another book is called The Pain of Egyptians, and it's
Yes.
Remedy in Poetry.
Yes.
Ahmed Fuad Najm and his poetic heritage. So how has poetry been healing for Egyptians? Have you ever written poetry, and has poetry or writing in general been healing for you?
Okay, well, let me start with a confession. And then
That's always good. That's
good
interesting.
tradition, of the Christian faith. Let me confess. And
Oh yes, and because you're
yeah,
of
yeah.
Coptic, you're of Coptic faith.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so let me confess and say to you, yes, I tried my hand like so many young Egyptians writing poetry, and please don't be impressed very much, because I wrote 9 poems all in one day, and that's it, and then I fell silent. Okay, and so I don't know, as far as poetry is concerned, I tried it in one day. And with different emotions and poems and different subject matter and so on, and then that's it. I kind of stopped. So the canon of inspiration fell silent, but then suddenly start these percussions, of something else, and that is writing prose, short stories and novels, and that's been with me for a while. This is where I find my forte, writing prose, writing fiction. It's very enjoyable, and I actually published a novel called Come With Me From Jerusalem. And again, it deals with this issue of how to relate to other people who are different from us in both ethnicity, faith, language. And it's a love story between an Egyptian Christian and a Jewish young woman, and they met in Jerusalem. And of course, the whole struggle of, wanting
Romeo
to...
and Juliet story.
Yes, exactly.
Of the Middle East.
Yeah, and contested loyalties. In fact, there was no problem between them at all. They did not, it was not an issue that they have different faiths and languages and so on. The issue was with the elders, their respective elders and families, and the communities, of course, at large. And herein comes the crisis for for the individuals who are in such a situation. Mm-hmm. How can I enjoy my love with this other person from the other group, and at the same time ignore the agony it causes my elders and my community? So that's the struggle in that novel. I'm very much fascinated by that. This idea that we are living in a fallen world, and nothing is really easy at all. And I tried my best to kind of portray this love conquers all. Mm-hmm. But I must admit, I was not really convinced. I mean, it's just, there's no perfect solutions.
No. In real life, no, there is not. But all we could do sometimes with literature, with the arts, with cinema, is maybe we can kind of sometimes see ourselves in the story, and to me, I feel that's part of the healing, is when you see yourself, that somebody else has kind of portrayed it in a way. It's like, oh, this is how I feel, and then it feels something about that is soothing and healing, just to see another human being that is understanding what you're going through, even though that human being is male, female, and you're not. And but it's the art of the writing and the art of the cinema that brings that healing in, and you feel like you're not the only one having these feelings and questions and thoughts and stuff like that. So
right, yeah, it is. There is no question that writing as this is therapy. You know, like you write, and somehow you're expanding.
yes,
You know, you're finding ways to express this, to get this out of your chest, so to speak. You know, and then when we find the experience of other people, when we read their books, kind of corresponding to ours, I think there is a healing in that.
So is that why that brings us, so that you have found, I'm sorry, you have Ahmed Fuad Najm and
Yes.
of your topics. So I'm assuming, based on what some of the things you're saying, you know, I can see the answer for that. But why did you choose him particularly for the Egyptian Revolution of 2011?
All right. Well, actually, many things actually appealed to me about him. First thing is that the kind of you know, the exceptional voice that he has. You know, his poetry challenges many givings in our own culture, Arab culture. First of all, it is written in the street language of Cairo. You know, so it is not in literary Arabic, classical Arabic. It is in the colloquial idiom of everyday life. So it throbs with reality, right? Let me have a swipe at Adonis, the great Arab poet alive now. No matter what Adonis can, you know, compose of his great, you know, kind of literary compositions, in the end, his influence is really limited, because he has chosen an idiom that is really way beyond the understanding of the common readers. Whereas a person like Ahmed Fuad Najm would actually start to talk about what people feel in the guts, not up here. You know, Adonis is the man that, you know, that extremely cerebral, and he, you know, I wish him well. I mean, he really wants to win the Nobel Prize, but good luck, you know. And whereas this man has seen that there are real issues in everyday life, he talks about this, he deals with this in beautiful and melodious poems that were rendered as songs by his blind companion, Sheikh Imam. You know that this was actually put to the music and sung, and it appeared many times as slogans in the chants at Tahrir Square during the Egyptian Revolution of 2011. So we're talking about poetry that can move nations, poetry that can change things on the ground, poetry that would, you know, get history to be rewritten. That is the great.
And that's something that people today, I was just talking about this to my friend. We were on the phone. My friend, she's a well-known poet, and she started writing other genres as well. Her name is Dunya Mikhail. She was born in Iraq. But we were on the phone yesterday talking about this, about a poet, an American poet, who became very famous, but using very, very common, simple language that, you know, normally in the past, it wasn't, you don't necessarily maybe get awards for that or become a bestseller,
Right.
but she's doing that. And we were giving her credit for the fact that, well, connection to the people. People want something that they can relate to, that touches their heart and not just their intellect. So it seems like now, from what you're describing about him, and you're interested in his work, is because he speaks to the people's heart. And I watched some videos of him when I read your bio, and I saw your interest, and I saw that it's even in his voice. Aside from it's in his words, but the passion in there, it's very strong and touching. So So that brings us to the subject of the Arab Spring. You know,
Yes.
How has, in your views, the Arab Spring affected the intellectuals? in that world?
Okay. Okay. Remember the JFK has that wonderful speech that says, "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask rather." So let me follow the model, the rhetorical model of this wonderful man, JFK, and answer you in this way. Ask not what Arab Spring, how Arab Spring affected intellectual. Ask rather how intellectuals affected Arab Spring. This is the way I can see it. That you cannot imagine the Arab Spring taking place without the writings and activism of a coterie of intellectuals and writers and artists in Egypt and elsewhere in the Arab world. So there's no question that there are works that appeared actually after Arab Spring, novels, and especially eyewitness accounts, from people who are not exactly well known to people who are known to us, like, for example, the Anglo-Egyptian Ahmed Suwaif. She wrote an eyewitness account. I think it's called Cairo, My City, My Revolution, if I'm not mistaken, and others. But it's actually, I would rather ask the question of how intellectuals and writers have paved the way to Arab Spring. We cannot think of Arab Spring, especially in Egypt, and the Tahrir Square without the writing and activism of a writer, for example, like Ala Aswani. I don't know if you followed that, his writings, but he is famous for a particular novel called the Yaqubian Building.
Yes.
Yes, which became a movie.
I was just, okay, I'm familiar, with the movie. I was just going to ask that.
With the movie.
And
it actually is going to expose the underbelly of Egyptian society and showed, the incredible, corruption in that, And before him, of course, we have also people like Sunallah Ibrahim, also in his writings, criticizing the many givens in our Egyptian society and elsewhere. And of course, the writings and compositions of people like Ahmed Ning, the man I enjoy writing and researching on. And so I think that you cannot think about Arab Spring happening without these kind of almost rehearsals for a revolution. And so when the moment came, that's what happens, you prepare nations to come at a particular moment and rise above, the overwhelming reality around them and try to change that. And that can be effected through writing, genuine writing. Can you imagine for a moment that the French Revolution, without the writings of people like Rousseau and Voltaire and Montesquieu? Can we imagine that without these philosophers, and the preparations for that? And as you could see, all it takes is to prepare people, just to say to them or inculcate in them through writing that you don't have to put up with this. Remember that oppression has a percentage of collusion between the oppressor and the victim. I think that we cannot claim that we are oppressed without taking responsibility for our oppression, because we can always resist. The fact is that when a man abuses a woman, his wife, for example, and beats her, and she continues to stay with him, she is guilty of being, in that kind of abusive relationship, she should resist. When I am abused at work, when I cannot have my human rights under particular regime, I am complicit in my own agony. And that's what is remarkable about Arab Spring. It is the realization of Arab people that say, we don't have to put up with this anymore. There was a movement in Egypt called Enough. I don't know if you're aware of it.
No,
called Kifaya. That was all before the Arab Spring. Kifaya.
So things were building up towards that.
And Tocqueville, remember Tocqueville, he has a wonderful book called Democracy in America about the American Revolution. Actually talked about this, referred to that. There comes a time when there enters the head of men or the thought of men that they no longer can put up with oppression. As Americans actually, when they actually revolted against the British colonial power. Khalas. And once they have that realization that I cannot take it anymore, ma'at fiya baqى, as my Beiruti friends would say.
And somebody very famous and very powerful is, she's been known to really not put up with any type of victimization. So the conference that you're holding that we mentioned earlier.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
In honor of Nawal El-Saadawi, and she doesn't put up with anything, and she's
Oh, she doesn't. No, she can.
I mean, just listening to her just gives you so much power. She's an amazing woman, and she's very feminine at how she expresses her views as well. So she has that powerful feminine way of being strong. What I'd like to know, because you have a very interesting picture of, I saw this on Facebook.
Right.
You were standing behind her. She was sitting there, and it said, behind every great woman is a man.
That's a man, yes.
Which is also true. Behind every great woman is a man, and behind every great
Imagine Nawal Saadawi.
That's the will balance there, right? I don't know if that was...
You laughed, you could see that, and that it was at such a moment that the camera just, flashed.
It was it's a beautiful picture. And, I was curious how you met her and what are your thoughts about her and her work.
We've had a wonderful...
You can say anything negative anyway, but I'd really like for us to give us an idea of who she is as a person and maybe even as a friend.
Yes, well, the whole idea behind the conference really came to me after so many visits to Cairo, and I would go and I would, with almost like a routine for me. I go to Cairo, and of course I have, my family there, my sister and my brother, and I would go and visit them. But then Nawal Saadawi was also. Sometimes even, my family members would be upset with me because I would see Nawal first. My idea is that, I'm in Cairo and they are in a place called Biela, 3 hours, 4 hours away from Cairo. So I go and see Nawal Saadawi. So after many talks like this and reading and dialogues, I've had wonderful dialogues with her. I've seen something that is absolutely the courage with which this writer, this thinker, kind of pronounced her judgment of her own societies. We cannot think about or imagine any change in favor of women in the last 50 years in Egypt without considering the impact of Nawal Saadawi's writings. You know that unfortunately we had this horrible practice, almost kind of a, what they call a circumcision of little girls. Sorry to have to, kind of mention this, but it was Nawal Saadawi for the years and years and years, kind of calling on the government to ban it until, of course, there's a law now that bans it. With the families, respect that law is something else, but it was Nawal Saadawi who did this. But also Nawal Saadawi has this, it's this wonderful relationship you can have with her. She doesn't, when you get to be friendly with somebody, you suspend criticism of them. You kind of lower your kind of critical view, and no, not with Nawal. So I had this wonderful dialogue with her, and I would يناغش, what they call يناغش, kind of teasing her with my statements and saying this and that to her, For example, I tried out my idea that the human body is racist by nature, and kind of get some reaction from it. Anyway, so I kept saying, what do you think of this and that? And she would have this wonderful answers. And one day, I think during the conference, I would read some of their but towards the end, I said, something, Nawal, I want you to kind of share with me your dreams for, the next while. And let me start with my dream. That was a couple of years ago. I said, my dream is to kind of leave the academy completely and devote myself 100% to writing novels, Nawal, and getting into this wonderful, life of the mind and imagination. And then, but I don't also want to work or do anything at all. So I want to live in beautiful island. Let us call it the island of Karkana in Tunisia. Actually, there is such a place, and it's lovely. I visited it. So I live in Karkana, and then I, if only that every day a bird would come with a grilled fish and feed me, and then all these kind of mermaids would sing songs to me. And immediately she shot back and she said, a typical man in your dream. You want the mermaids to sing for you. And she said in Arabic, أحلامك ذكورية. Your dreams are typical of a man. You want the mermaids to sing for you and you don't do anything, and I wanted to say, wait a minute, are we not friends? Nawal? يعني شوية عليا, come on.
No, he mbayna straight, like you're not gonna ever compromise.
Not lower, kind of, no. She is not gonna suspend her critical stance on issues.
And so she believes then, from what you said, so it seems, this was another topic that I was discussing with my friend Dunya yesterday, was the idea that our love for our writing, she teaches Arabic language at a university, and I'm the executive director of the Chaldean Cultural Center, and we write, both of us, on the side. And we were discussing but I see that in her perspective, in Nawal's perspective, then she gives a high respect that while work is important, that she believes that work, because you're benefiting humanity outside of just the written word. Is that what I get from her response to you? Is that we should be working, not just kind of focusing just on the writing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
that's what her message is. It's like,
I thought we were
honor
friends.
your work. Yeah.
Yes, I thought that we were friends, and I would just like relax and
you thought she was going to give you support with this idea.
And she said, oh, what a wonderful idea that you stop working and you concentrate on your creative writing. And for her, I think that this is serious. Writing is a serious thing. It's not a profession. It is a calling. It is, and it's also. She believes in the power of words to move and effect change in society. That's why, actually, because I organized this conference, and I called it celebrating Arab women as agents of change and progress. And it's actually inspired by Nawal's work, you know, that somehow, and I think you'll find that the written word, and sometimes people say the spoken word also, sometimes they would make history. They would move nations to act and therefore shape historical currents.
Well, she's definitely someone that has proved that that's, you know, what her work does. And then
Yes.
I'm wondering, you know, I mean, she's very exceptional, as we both know, but, you know, what about other women in the Arab world? What are their role, especially as writers, and, you know, how influential are they? Is she an exception? Are there others like her?
Well, I must have, of course, there are others who are like her, and different sometimes, but certainly they are. We should not really confuse between women writers and feminists. I mean, there are women who write in Arabic, and they have followers or a following, you know, readers and so on, but they are not necessarily feminists, you know. So if we're talking about Nawal Saadawi type, the kind of writing in order to expose oppression against women or of women, and implicit in this a call for a change and for equality between the sexes, you will find other people. For example, you know, you have in Morocco, somebody like Fatma Mernissi, whom I also had the wonderful opportunity to befriend. She passed away, bless her soul, some years ago. And she's famous for a book called Beyond the Veil. She's famous for another book called Shahrazad Goes West. Okay, I would recommend
I'm aware of that. Yes, I'm aware of those titles.
Shahrazad Goes West is just really lovely piece of work. I want to also mention some names of women in my own homeland in Egypt. I don't know if you're aware of a woman called Huda Sha'rawi. Huda Sha'rawi was in the 1920s. 1923, Huda Sha'rawi is like had a veil like the rest of Egyptian women, and she went and participated in a conference on women in Rome. The conference was discussing the right of women to vote. This is 1923, right? Well, Huda Sha'rawi came back, arrived, you know, I think by cruise or something, Alexandria. And then from Alexandria, she took the train to Cairo. When she arrived in the train station in Cairo, she took off the veil. And that was a remarkable gesture of this brave woman. And she wrote about, of course, her own history, her own autobiography, and paved the way for change in favoring women. You have also another in the 1950s, a woman called Durriya Shafiq, also Egyptian. And by the way, she's credited with the pushing the right of women to vote. It was only in 1956 that women in Egyptian women were given the right to vote. And that was during Nasr. It was like a very strict kind of regime. So Durriya Shafiq called for that right of women to be granted. The government wavered, and Durriya Shafiq declared a hunger strike. And it was only when she was granted, or women were granted the right to vote, did she end the hunger strike. So, and others, you know, you have others, you know, but nobody really in the kind of, you know, close to the stature of people like Nawal Saadawi and Fatma Mernissi. You have young voices, and of course, I mean, these are to be respected and to be, you know, valued, no question. But nobody with this kind of long record We're talking about 50 years or more, and tens of, books, no less than 40 or 45 in different languages. And
Definitely like legendary.
Yes, untiring, struggle to even now, she's in the 90s with all sorts of health problems, and kind of confined to her apartment in Cairo. And I just like sending her my best wishes through this venue. And she's like still voicing her own daring opinion in a society that sometimes does not really pay that much attention to women and their rights. These are remarkable. See, if we're talking about a feminist in the United States, we're talking about comparably an easier task, yes. Honestly, yes. But we are talking about when you come to the dens, lion's den, and roar back, and say that we have the right to equal rights when it comes to our own salaries, when it comes to our own rights, when we can be an equal witness in the courtroom, we can be I can give my vote, I should have the right to have education, I should have the equal right to inherit my father's money, wealth, and not to have half of my brothers, I think that these are the issues of the day now, and people have to have the courage to stand up and denounce this.
It's a totally different level of bravery, that's for sure. And
we are in the 21st century.
Yes.
That's what Nawal and others are doing.
And this leads to this, the last question, which kind of ties to this, is, so it seems like a lot of Arab literature is based on ideology and politics. Is that a strength or weakness in your opinion? And is that the reason behind the strong censorship in the Middle East? Because again, we just talked about how this is so brave of Nawal to be at the position and to write what she wrote and to speak about what she spoke. And why is that in the Middle East? And what do you give, the reason for that?
Okay, well, let me just make a distinction between writing for a cause and writing creatively. All right? So writing for a cause, like a discourse, you are writing almost like a dissertation, right? You have this problem, and let us just go through the elements of this problem. And, it is, in my view, we need to deal with this issue and do the following, almost like a policy paper. This is to be differentiated from writing creatively, a novel, a poem, and so on. If in writing creatively, you start with ideology, you'll end up with a lackluster, mediocre piece of work, right? Just think with me, this evening, about the greatness of Russian literature of the 19th century and the great fiction or novels created then. Crime and Punishment, War and Peace, Anna Karenina, and so on. And then compare this to literature produced in the same location. I mean, Russia, kind of different borders, Soviet Union, and you have this Soviet kind of literature that is pathetic, that is lacking, genuineness, that is extremely ideological. If you start with the ideological yardstick and you want to create your novel in accordance with it, you'll end up, with a very poor and impoverished piece of work, right? So this is something that is now. I have to tell you that we have to struggle in the Arab world. Arab culture has always looked at literature as writing or composition for a purpose, for a moral. عبرة, as they say in Arabic. So remember that the Arabic word for literature is adab. And the word adab is literature in Arabic, as well as etiquette, social graces, good manners, ethics, and so on. So you could see that, you know, you write literature and you're expected to be like teaching people a lesson, or there is a moral behind the story. But you have exceptions. Look at the Arabian Nights. Pure entertainment. I think that's something that we need to always look for, the entertaining part in the creative work. If it's lacking, then it ends up being like exhortation towards a particular kind of ideological line. And that is not the best way to write literature. Remember also that creativity, whether in writing or art, cannot come out of pure states. For example, neither hell nor heaven will have art. There will be no novels in hell or heaven, because it's totally pure evil or agony, and the other one is total bliss. Where would we have drama? You know? Where would we have the conflict? Will we ever have a Picasso in heaven? Or great literature in hell? What great literature? You know? When it is like total hell. And so any kind of perfect states of evil or good cannot produce art. Art comes out of a fallen world, a contested world, values that are struggling all the time. That is the kind of source for the greatness of art and literature.
Wow. Thank you so much. I feel like I just learned a great deal just from your expressions, from your answers. I really appreciate that you've taken this time to be with us and to share your magnificent ideas and wisdom. And I really look forward to the conference that's coming up November 17th.
Same here. Same here.
I will be promoting it. I will be putting a link to the conference. I think it'll be very important. And I'm excited. I'm very excited to meet the women that are going to be participating. Maybe they too can join us in this discussion series in the future, so we can have a chance to hear them out and learn about them. So this has opened, just your gesture in this conference has opened doors to so much. That's why this little pebble in the pond, what it creates and reaches across borders, across cultures. Yeah. So yes, thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And I wanted to know that the schedule, final schedule for our own program, conference program, have been sent today. I sent them. Okay. And we're going to share it. We'll send it to you. And I'd like you to prepare your piece so that we can actually have it in the proceedings, the conference proceedings.
And by the way, my topic is legendary women of ancient Iraq. So I'm very excited. Yes, I'm very excited to bring them forward. They were also lost in the midst of history, and I try through my writing, because like you said, that writing is a tool for us for expression, but also to serve. And I feel like it's my opportunity to bring these women that were lost until the archaeologists started to dig them up to surface.
Well, this is wonderful. Remember, these are two keywords that are music to our ears, and that is women and Iraqis.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kamal. I mean, I'm really looking forward to continue watching your work and where it goes, and we're looking forward to one day having you come back again with as I'm sure you're going to be doing other conferences and other works. And then I'm going to take up a rain check on that. Are you giving me?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll be in contact.
And we can lead you to Alexandria also.
Okay. Thank you.
Alexandria and if time allows, Luxor in the south.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you everybody for watching. I know you've just received so much information, and it was so wonderful hearing everything that Dr. Kamal has discussed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.